Okay, so we should be live. Make sure that feeds across okay. So this is our 5th or 6th of these live streams. It'll probably be our last, as we're hopefully getting out of shutdown next week, and we'll have some sort of actual class back. So that I'm really looking forward to actually hitting people. That's a good thing. So anyway, this will probably be one of our last ones here. I'll revert back to sort of short lessons on the YouTube channel. But pay attention here. We might do one of these again in the future. Might do one just with a regular class, so that people who aren't from the Blackbird training group can see what a class of people in it actually looks like. So okay, good. The topic for tonight's class is contact and contrada. So contact is meeting force as it's coming in. Hold on, let me check something. Good connection. Things seem to be going good. Okay, just had to make sure that was going on. Is anything meeting force? So number one's coming in, I four-wall it, I roof block it, and you absorb force into that. That's considered a contact. It's considered contact. So you mean, right, sort of, if you think of that as force on force. Contrada is to counter something. And contra kind of usually means against, but in this case, it means sort of to not meet force with force. So that can be a following line. He throws a number one, and I sidestep, and I hit his arm. He's coming in, and I counter up against the arm. As long as I'm not meeting that force on force, that's considered more of the contrada side of things. Obviously, some of these issues blur. These are general concepts. There's no magic. This is a contrada, and this is a counter or a contact. You'll see some of these definitely blend the lines between the two. But as we look at these, I want to start off with the contact line. And so typically when we teach the tri-V, and that's the main way that I teach here at Blackbird, is we teach four-wall blocking. All right? So, and I think I covered this in one of the earlier classes, but I'm just going to go back and review. So we're going to go from the 5 count, or in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. That becomes the basis of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. That is, again, the Tri-V is a more recent curriculum. The older curriculum, with 64 attacks or Dose Methodist, used again quattro cantos, 4 walls, but it taught it a little bit differently. So I'm gonna start with the contact version, the 4 walls version, in the way that I first learned it with 64 attacks from Tuan Jared before he transferred into the Tri-V side of things. And this is sort of a throwback to an older methodology. I'm going to go over, I'm not going to really talk about the feet at first. I want to start off just sort of basic mechanics of a 4-wall block. So, and again, I think I'm sure I've taught this before, but if you look at my arms, when I block, so typically we would go 1 and 2, right? So 1 and 2 are my 1 and 2 attacks. They also are 1 and 2 of my 4-wall. And again, just if you look at that basic line, a number 1's coming in, I'll meet that number 1. A number 2's coming in, I'll meet that number 2 with my own number 2. That's a wall block. If the older system had a little different way of teaching it, it separated 5 attacks from 4 walls as sort of different concepts to be more descriptive about what is going on. And I'm just going to go through that. So when we do this, and I throw my 4-wall, I'm going to use a sidestep footwork. So start in the beginning, I'm going to sidestep to face that direction, imagine that number 1's coming over here, going to hit me in the temple. I'm going to sidestep, come across here, so that this is even with my shoulder. My left hand will be on my right wrist, like this. And you can see what's happening here. My elbows aren't flared out. They're in and braced up against the body. And this is supporting here. And so you'll see some systems will do things like this or this when they 4-wall. Again, because Bikini is trying to think blade oriented here, putting anything up here by the blade is generally a bad idea. So you're going to see this hand back down on the wrist down here. So you're going to see 1, again, hit my side step, and then 2. Okay, again, and I want my knuckles out facing this direction, my blade edge oriented that way. So 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. This is going to be a 10 count pattern as I go through here. The first 2 are designed for high level attacks. Imagine them, they're hitting you in the temple, right? So you want this part of your stick. Let me say something about general blocking. When you block, you don't want to block with the weakest part of your stick, literally the weakest. In European systems, that's called the weak, and this is the strong, okay? So if I try to block here and he's taking the force here, this has bad leverage between my wrists and the point of this. So I am literally the weakest here, most easily to manipulate. I am the least easy to manipulate down here. I am the strongest, so the weak and the strong, the frail and the forte, right? So when I do this, I'd love to block down here, except I don't have a hand guard, so I want to not block right next to my hand in case I misjudge that and they hit my hand. So we're going to block up in the middle of the stick, okay? So imagine that temple shot's coming in, and in this case, I'm going to block right below where this black tape is. Ideally, because that's closest to my strong, my forte, as that's coming in. So here, okay, that temple shot, we'll take that here. And again, that other line's coming in this way. So these are my high line blocks. So 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. But I'm going to work my form. This is my side step. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. You notice what I'm not doing here is the 1 and 2. I don't have to do that, right? I can move between my walls very economically with these 2 lines. So again, 1 and 2. Now I'm gonna, so those are our 2 high level blocks. Now imagine someone's trying to whack you in the hand. I was standing here like this, and a midline attack it might be a lateral, it might be a number 1, but drop down into the mid-range. And now I want to block that. So as that one's coming in mid-range, I did high, high, and now I'm going to be middle, middle. Okay? So now you can see where I've dropped my frame of reference, and I'm blocking down here around torso level, sort of sternum level, right? So high, high, middle, middle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, pretty straightforward. Just differentiate those 2 high blocks and low blocks. So got a question come in. Yes, quattro cantos, 4 walls. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and Morgan, this form is from the 64 attacks or the old Doce Methodist. This, if you weren't here in the very beginning, this is how this I first learned it way back when. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go low, which would be our out of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 attacks would be 3 and 4 lines. So 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? I didn't really talk about, imagine that when you're blocking here, this is like a knee shot, and you're dropping down, yet again, moving this as where your shoulder was in terms of its distance, you're taking that on the center of the stick or the blade as you're coming out. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to go back to the high. 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now we've revisited sort of opposite corners of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so I use the quattro concerts, 4 walls, right? Literally are the walls of the house, if you think of it that way. I think last week or a couple weeks ago, I explained how I like the roof block terminology, even though that's not typically a Piketty terminology, because it helps me form this house, walls and a roof in terms of my defensive structure around me. And it works conceptually, for that idea for me. So we've now formed this wall. So we have essentially several walls, right? Too high, too middle, too low, and that forms these general wall ideas. So again, one more time: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So wall blocks are the first defense taught. Okay, in terms of basic structure. Why are they taught that? Because it is the easiest thing to stick something between me and the other guy, at the very least, or you're essentially matching lines, and that's conceptually really easy to do. He throws something at you, and I stick something in the way of it. High percentage, gross motor, doesn't take a lot of decision making, and it is usually because you, as the student, are behind on time, right? You're reacting to the other person's attack. You're not setting the other person up. And because as a beginner, that's generally where you are in the fight. When you spar, you're going to be against intermediate and higher level people, and you don't have the ability to really read the other person yet, so you're often responding to pretty gross motor attacks. And in that time, you're behind on time, right? We talk about the timing principles. You're ahead of time, you're behind on time, you're at the same time, okay? Pretty much all martial arts have this idea to them. And in Piketty, the classic one we want to do is counter on motion before attack time combat. But in the beginning, you can't do that. In the beginning, you are just surviving, right? And so in the beginning, the highest percentage thing to do is stick something in the way, and you're going to survive that initial attack, and then you're going to counterattack. See a question coming in from Morgan. All contact by taking strike in the wall as a counterattack with the left hand. Good question, Morgan. So Morgan asked, if you guys can see that, can I four-wall his hand? Well, okay. So fortunately, I have someone to work with today. Yeah. Actually, come over here. So imagine that number 1 is coming in. I can. What happened to that strike? Right? This doesn't stop the momentum of this weapon. If I was all the way out here and this, even if I make him let go, there's a really decent chance that's going to eject into me. So usually, because you're surviving it, you just want to block on the weapon and secure yourself. If I come down to the hand here, or I do, a strike this way, that doesn't stop this thing in its travel, and I'm still in the threat. So usually, if I'm going to counter against the hand, that's contrada, and if he strikes, I'm out of the path of the travel. If it ejects, I'm out of the trajectory of the weapon. So good question, but typically not at that level. Does that make sense, Morgan? Let me know if that explanation worked for you. Okay, so since I have a partner, we're going to go through some of the basic striking patterns. So we're going to do high, high, middle, middle, low, low, and we'll just do that in the beginning. Okay, so now I'm going to run through that striking pattern. He's going to go high, high, middle, middle, low, low. Okay, now he's going to go high, C cut, low. And then it's got to be broken. Back here, high, low. Here we come back and we start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let's do it that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice matching shirts, by the way. It's almost like we planned this. So, okay. Okay, so that is the basic contact form, using those 10 strikes. The way we would do that with a partner is we would do the same thing and then we just alternate, right? So he feeds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I would feed to him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you would repeat. Okay, so if you have a partner, that one's pretty straightforward in the feed. To demonstrate the striking pattern, and it isn't fixed, you just have to hit your targets of 1, 2, I can go low, number ones, 3, 4, or I could just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can do those last two as C cuts or whatever. Anyway, so that's the super basic form. That's 10 of the counts out of the 64 attack series when you're going through there. And that's our basic contact form. That's the first level of defense that's taught to sort of the incoming student. Stick something between me and the other guy. And then the next one would be biome. But this is wall blocking. This would be the first level. So how do we move from contact, which again is relatively low level defense? The problem with four walls is it gets taken advantage of. I'm dedicated. He shows here. I do this a couple times. I block this, and he gets an idea about sort of where my skill level is, and he's going to start faking, right? And so this happens, and then something else happens. He takes advantage of my kind of dedicated. I'm not moving out of range. I'm not blocking. That's just sort of where I am, technique-wise. And if you're against a better fighter, you've got, bad things happen. How do we move from contact to contrada? Contrada is, again, a following line. You would use this typically if you're against someone bigger and stronger, or maybe they have a bigger magnitude weapon. They have a staff, right? They've got a sabat. And I can't go contact to contact with. I'm going to, I'm not going to make it through this process. And so with that unmatched weapon, or just the guy's a bigger guy and just has a lot more firepower than you, you can't match contact to contact. As a smaller fighter, I'm going to lose that engagement, right? So this thing comes up. Yeah, guess what's not going to work? I don't care how reinforced this is. He's going to blow right through it. Okay, so contact is not a viable option for me. Like, I might survive a little bit on that. I might not survive the first one. He may, if I try to four-wall this one, he's going to blow right there. I can already feel how that's collapsing on him. Okay, that's not going to work. I don't have the power to do that. So I have to be able to contrada this. I have to be able to counter that attack without needing force on force. It doesn't matter. I could Pyong this, and great, it's a little bit better. It's not a lot better. Okay, all of my contact lines against these big power shots is going to be problematic. And maybe the disparity isn't always this big, but it could be just a bigger fighter, and they're just chucking a lot of firepower around and big power around. You still got to deal with that. So the first shift that we're going to make, and I'm going to have him go back just to a regular stick so you can see what that looks like, will be a motion from the contact line. So this would be four wall, but now instead of being back here, I want to move laterally, sort of attack that attack, and then I'm going to move around into it. So I'm hiding behind my weapon, contact to contrada. Okay? Again, if I go this way with it, can I do it? Yep, but I'm more in his basket, right? So now I see that, I want to cut that line a little bit, and I want to follow it. Let me shift to a training blade. One of the things on this one, it's good to note edge alignment. You can obviously do this with a stick. Oh, and a lot of times you'll see this. You see still the number one, and you'll see this block. And now what I'm doing now on this one, I can do this two ways. I can re-tick here, use the edge of that, and then slide around. And you'll see how that's bringing my here to around. I'm not meeting force on force, even though I'm not doing this. Okay, I'm turning and cutting as I move out. I still am, and I'm moving it. Again, I'm going to meet. That might look like a wee tick where I'm going here, okay, and now I'm coming around. I've done videos in the past about edge damage and contact, you know, and how you don't want to do this. And I'm a firm believer of, you know, save your life first. But there are reasons why you might block with a flat that don't involve necessarily the strength of the block. You are stronger if we go edge to edge. Physically, your wrist is stronger, your muscles are in alignment. This is good biomechanics as we're doing this. But I go off and enter, okay? I re-tick and enter. So I'm following that line. I came underneath on that one. On the other one, I came down, re-tick into here. In the very beginning level, that first one I did was four wall and then cut. It's all the same idea, right? I touched contact and I went to the other side. Here, contact, and I go to the other side. And again, I want to be further out of this pocket, so in this case, I'm now moving this way. And it also sets up my disparity in how I'm doing my defense. On the first one we did, I four-walled. Now I am four-walling and I'm moving the opposite direction as I'm going to. Now the funny thing is we're both doing sidestep, right, as I do that sort of mid-range power generation. You're not, of course, fixed to that, but that would be an entry line. Recontradas into contradas. I don't jump into back of the blade to cut. Yeah, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing with that, or edge of the blade. I usually don't, in this angle in particular, use back of the blade. It's a edge on flat. As I'm going this way, as I'm coming in here. And I typically don't get too far down into the contradas to recontradas, like how do you counter the counter? It certainly happens. But typically I don't teach it that way. It'll become this pattern of counter for counter. There's a counter for everything, obviously, and you know that. But good question. Okay, so again, that first level, I do a four-wall block here. He repeats it. I'm going to move and come in. Okay, so that's against the number one. And I'm going to give a couple of different examples here as we go into this. That is me reacting to the attack. So the other one is why, how to take advantage of the four-wall. So now this is the show one, go two. So remember when I said that you can take advantage of a four-wall block? So he's doing the setup. He sees this. He's going to show one and go two. What is this? If we were both matching, that's a contrada to me as the defender, right? I mean, it's a fairly obvious fake. If we're fighting, right? It would be here. That's moving into contrada. It isn't necessarily. Typically, it's me initiating now. Though I could kind of do the same thing. I could do the same. Like the first time he shoots this, I do a four-wall, bang, and he thinks he's got it, does it again, bang, right? I can do show one, go two. I call it show one, go two. It's four walls into a number two, or if I'm offensive, it looks like a number one into a number two. So these are all examples of shifting from contact to contrada. Okay. So we're going to just play with that. He's going to feed me. In this case, we'll just make it three number ones in a row, just to demonstrate the differences. Okay, so in the beginning, I'm going to go four wall here. I'm going to go re-tick into my cut. here, I'm going to go, and that one is, you can't kind of see that here, it's a 3/4. I was showing, and I was going into it. So you kind of have a blend of the different pieces. So 4 wall, here, here, and here, okay? That's all against the number 1. Now we're going to go to number 2. So number 2 is backhand line, first level, contact, as you come in here. So wall block, and then go ahead and let that slash the outside. Good. So I get that here, here. Okay, that's the wall block that we did earlier. So the next line on that one is, well, trying to do this V-tick is hard. Right? It does not have the same comfort level as moving this way into the number 1. So what I'll usually do is I'll actually countercut here, down into this line here, and then follow as you're coming in here. So it's still, now this is contact and then back. I'm moving into contact and back in. Here, and that one, for this one, I'm actually still moving back. So I went back and received, and then I moved back in, okay? Back, and back. It's important to note I don't always have to go to the limb, okay? I can go here with that line if it's available. Especially on the backhand lines, this hand is just timing-wise is often gone before I can get to it. I'd love to get the hand if I could, but if it's gone, it's gone, and I'll move to something else. Here, whatever that target is, and then if he's still around to come back with the next shot, then we're there. So these lines are conceptual. It isn't always that you're always going after the limb, even though we talk about this following contact versus meeting contact on this, okay? So again, he'll go backhand. There's my contact line here. There's my entry line. We talk about this edge on edge, coming just a little bit. When I meet here, it's actually not this. It isn't true edge on edge. I'm actually doing a cut down as I'm doing that. I'm adding a downward vector to this rather than trying to meet this force on force. The other thing that I'm doing, and the reason I'm sidestepping back, is we want our footwork to save us, not this block. Okay? We step back with a 4 wall. This is insurance. But ideally, our footwork has saved our life. It's moved us out. This just makes sure I didn't screw this thing up. Okay? If I was really good with my timing, and I have this ideal pattern, I don't even need this to happen, and I should be able to enter it in if I have a good gauge of it. But that's a higher level approach than your beginning student. The beginning student is, oh shit, and I stick something in the way, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Okay, the advanced level student should be like, oh, hi, look at that, right? And be able to understand range, counter, and then re-enter. So obviously different approaches. I would not expect, well, ideally advanced students aren't having to 4 wall block very often. Even though it happens, those guys are supposed to be countering at a higher level. Anytime that I'm occupying my weapon with their blade, it's time that I can't be counteracting. I should be doing, ideally, single-time defenses. So what is a single-time defense? Is he goes here, I cut, right? I move myself out of position, I counter his arm, maybe I counter his head as we move into that, that's high-level defense. If you can accomplish that, that's high-level defense. But for what we're working on in this, again, this is very beginner level how we move from contact to control. So this again, so he goes backhand, counter, let that come through, backhand, and enter. Okay? Way. Okay? So contact to contrada. Okay? In your house, the walls hold up the roof, but anytime you wall of contact, you open up the floor. Yeah, so I think you're mixing styles there. We're getting all Wing Chun-y with or the 4 gates, right? Same, obviously, conceptually they have similar ideas that way. Okay, so we had, and then our third idea was how to set that one up. And in this one, you're almost going to move into this one and attack that one a little bit more. So I went sideways, back into it, back into that contrada line. All of these is my backhand line, my backhand line counter, my backhand line counter again. Okay, go ahead and show that at 45. That one is here, side step, here, here, and so those are high line entries into the counter. So again, contact contrada. There's lots of different contrada variations on this one. Typically, and so I'm showing these as a sort of simple pattern of contrada, and I just give you a couple of variations and the progressions on the ones and twos. So now we're going to go into the basic drill that we normally use to teach this. Is we would go contact, where we're meaning 1 and 2, 2, 1, 2. So now I need something that's going to transfer me from these contact lines to a contrada line. So I'm going to go show 1, go 2. And cooperatively, and using no footwork or anything else right now to save the picture, right, I move to, we're both throwing 1s and 2s, we're countering each other. Now I fake, contact. Okay. Here, I'm going to show 1, go 2, and we're both getting countered in this pattern. I get out of it by breaking my 1, and we're back to contact. So one of the things I don't want to do here, and this is actually sort of important, is I don't want to fake the number 1 when I'm in contact because I put myself in contrada. I fake this, aha, wham, and I get hit. Don't fake at the wrong time when you're playing around with this. I will get to broken 2. Yeah, that's actually our other entry line. So what we're doing is 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Then to get into contrada is show 1, go 2. And now we're countering to get out. I break that and come back in. Okay, so the one Morgan's talking about is the broken 2. That's actually also one of the more common ones that we teach on this one. I just use the show 1, go 2 because I had shown it earlier. What that one is 1 and 2. And so now I'm going to make contact and come around. And we're doing into our contrada. I break the 1 to get out, and we enter. Here, I break the 2 to get my flow. And get out. Okay, so that really simple flow, right? Just from what we showed, you have now 2 entries, show 1, go 2, and the broken 2 to move in from contact to contrada, and we have this broken 1, this feint on the 1 to get out. Okay, so I'll give you, let's just do one other line, just because if you don't have a partner, this is throwing a lot of stuff at you, but 1, 2, here, I'm going to break here to get into this as we're moving back and forth. And one of the easiest ones at this one, without using footwork, is a wave in, wave out. Here, body motion. That'll just keep us in the picture as we're getting this line. Are we both in the picture? Come this way a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to use what's called a circle. And so that's just a circle this way. He's got the number 2. If I come forward, he's going to win. So I'm going to pull this in tight to my body, circle it around, and then I come back in, and presumably he's going to catch up the line to count. 1, 2, broken 2 to enter. I got contrada. I'm going to circle out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, broken 2, contrada line, do that a little bit. Here, circle. Okay. Show 1, go 2. now I'm doing all the transfers. Normally Jim would be doing the same thing to give us, that was a broken one, to get us back, to get us moving in and out of the contact and contrada lines. Oh, like glad you liked it, Morgan. Okay, so that's the drill. Why doesn't fighting look like the drill, right? What's the practical application of the stuff we just showed you? Offensively, the show one, go two, and one of the reasons I use it is that's a pretty practical thing. That, you know, you give a guy a, hey, look at this. And he's worried about it, hey, and now I can use that as my setup for my entry. That's a really straightforward entry into contrada from contact, right? In the beginning, you set someone up, you have a good explosive, number one and number two, and the most common thing to do is they just block it. Part of it because there's not a lot of commitment off of that, but also it's strong and you kind of resort back to that, especially early on in a fight. The guy's kind of feeling out. He's not going to do anything. He doesn't have a feel for your movement or your speed or your distance, and you're going to be a little bit conservative about how you defend against things, but you want to give him that. And then also before he reads you too much to like get a good idea how to start counteracting you, then you start, you know, upping the game and trying to set him up. So that's why that show one, right? So you're going to start off in the beginning of bang, bang, 1, 2, and then the next one maybe is bang, and that's your contrada line. Show one, go two. The broken two is the same thing. Usually the way I interpret the broken two is a jab, okay? So right with a broken two, jab. Broken two, jab. There isn't a big difference. My targeting's a little bit different on it, but it's the same idea. Especially if he's loaded in a number one. Here, I might shoot to there, but if he goes offensive, right, I'll use that same jab as my deflection to beat that either against the weapon, that way, or against the limb, if I can get out and counter it. Here. So I'm in jab here, that's my contrada, okay? And so usually what happens is if I set up that jab that way, I won't retract it. I'm now trying to cut, and the cut I'm actually trying to get is if I get this, I'm not trying to lop off his hand with a big lateral. It's going to be here, and it's probably going to be a slicing cut, or I get here, and even his own, I want to make sure I have pressure as he goes by, that I pick up something off that retracting cut. By its inherent nature, this doesn't have, I'm not trying to set up this big giant backhand cut that way. This is very much jab here. Oh, I'm going to move offline here. Oh, I'll give you the upper one here. Right, there's my line. Even if he goes through here, maybe I get to pick on the thrust off of there, but I don't have this big power backhand because it takes a lot of commitment on my part to sink that power backhand. This jab is low dedication. So just like, again, if you only do the Tri-V and you don't know what the Sagitas are, the early Sagitas had these patterns of jab, hook out of them. And that's exactly what we did with a lateral and a hooking thrust as a counter off of them. Okay, good. So now the next piece of this process is we would just play with it. And again, we'll go back to that 1 and 2. And then actually the different pieces. So we're on that contact contrada line here, and I move into contrada. Again, this is just giving you this idea. Real fighting doesn't look like this. I move out and I come back in. So that feint is that the counter to maybe that jab, right? He set up in jab. I see that, and I want to let that travel. So you set a jab here. No, you set a jab, right? So here, bang, and I'm going to fill that space. That's me feinting, breaking his timing, and then re-entering. So that's one of the simplest actions to change the line. And again, when I do that, like especially if he's sort of set up or he's given me a couple of jabs there, like to my hand here, and this is happening, like I'm perfectly set up to eat that if I feed it. So now I fake it here and re-enter. Maybe he does that pick to the circle, pick, jab to thrust, right? So I got here, and now I'm going to have to try to pick up his attack, and this becomes a 4-wall instead of a true entry. Okay, so again, that's just application of what comes out of the drill. So we'll move from we'll do the drill. So contact right here, and we're going to move around now. I'm not going to sort of fixate on this footwork. Here, I'm getting out from under. There's any number of ways you can do this here. Okay, this is our contrada line. I'm going to break and enter. And we're keeping this pretty simple and only using the 1 and 2 lines on this. And then a broken tube to come out of that. So a little bit more dynamic, still not a fight. We're both just, we're just working that drill and moving around. But you can see it's no longer the static 1-for-1 drill, though that's where you started with. Now we're moving around, learning to read, what's he doing here, how can I move my body to get out of that? That's the dynamic part of it. The next part is how we transfer from that movement drill to sparring. And so now it's going to look a little bit more like what you saw before. And for a lot of this, at long distance, and we'll be doing long distance work, it'll be a lot of hand. I'm usually not trying to go deep. In the beginning, we're always trying to target the hands. Okay, so we're going to do, from that movement drill that we just had, the contact and contrada. Okay, so we're going to start off with, and now we're going to circle here, and we're going to either set up contact, typically, and we're going to restrict this to pretty much 1 and 2 lines. So it's a limited spar that way. So as we go around here, and we don't necessarily have to do this, right? We can, if that helps you, about just make sure that you have this timing here about where this is here. And so that, I don't know if that's really obvious on the screen what's going on here, is we are essentially doing that same drill about 2 feet apart. And that's what we call technical sparring. You can do that one with live blades, and it was one of the traditional ways that they would train this. Whereas all the timing is the same, but we're just a couple feet apart, so we don't have to make contact. I can have my exact Gnunting or whatever blade you have, and I can practice this. Obviously, it's not real contact, but we both recognize, oh, he got me. He got me there. And so you can actually have a competitive spar where there's no contact if both people understand what the game is. When I first saw this, I didn't understand this at all. Like, I had one guy telling me, like, I'm hitting you. I'm like, I don't understand. You're 6 feet away from me. We're not hitting each other. And it is a valid training method for, to see what's going on. But it is very difficult to understand if you don't know what you're looking at with this. So we're going to move to a little bit more of a contact line, where we're kind of doing anything with the framework of only 1s and 2s, right? And we're generally, again, long distance target training. Okay, good. Okay. So you should be able to see that when we're in there, we are doing exactly what we were doing earlier, just more dynamically. Moving around, touch each other a couple times, just let each other, oh yeah, got that one, didn't get that one. And that's your beginning level spar. We don't need, fencing mats are a good thing. But you can do this with sticks and light gloves, and you are sparring. Even though it's not Dog Brothers, but who cares? At this level, we're learning where's the line? Where's the counter? Here's how I take that. So that's the core of what we're doing here. And that was like 4 techniques. A little bit of contact lines, a couple contrada lines. I'm gonna throw some more in here, the 3 and 4 lines, a couple examples of the contradas on this one to show where these are coming from. But that's the core of, and because the 1 and 2 lines are typically the most important on this when you counter it, because they're the most common lines you're going to see in terms of sort of real attacks. Okay, 3 and 4 lines, or low lines. Okay, if he goes for a low line shot to my leg here, okay, contact would be 4 wall. Okay, contrada might be this. Okay, in the Scottish broadsword or British military saber, we do a lot with slipping the leg, and this would be the same thing. Either I would counteract directly to the head, or on the contrada line, I take the arm, and then we can do whatever as we go into this. But just like the number 1, the contrada's here. For the low line, the contrada's here as we move across that. So you can either interpret that as a backhand at number 2, and that could be a backhand number 2. This also could be a number 2, or he's throwing a number 3, or a number 4, and I'm throwing a number 4. Or number 3. And I'm throwing a number 4. That makes sense. Okay, so just sort of origination, I'm cutting, or I'm cutting, and again, I'm following the arc of that attack. Okay, so now we're going to do this. He's going to feed either the number 1 here, I'm going to counter. He's going to go low, and I'm going to counter. Okay.
A 1.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. I've got to read where the attack is coming from. Total side note, not Pikiti at all. In our Scottish broadsword and British military training, they would always teach to drop this leg back. This has a similarity to stuff you see out of Calice Illustrissimo, because there's no decision making on my part. I'm not thinking, oh, is he coming high line and I'm doing this, and is he going low line and so I should slip my leg. I always slip my leg. Because now there's no decision. I'm just trying to counter his arm wherever his arm is, and generally I'm safe, right? Our footwork is supposed to make us safe. Fighting traditions have the same idea, kind of regardless. I want to be safe about it. So in both of these cases, if I'm worried about it, I'll slip regardless, because I don't know where he's going. And I don't care where he's going. I want to make my body safe. Okay, so that's a version of contrada. Now, different levels on attacks. It's the same. It's the same contrada. The backhand line. If he's going to go low, it's the same thing. I can go. So if he goes low, I can counteract the weapon here. Obviously, I could, if I was really good, I could just enter. Again, single time defense. We're not there yet with this defense. I can enter and then re-attack. That was the backhand line. If he goes low with that one, right, it's that same thing. So here, I can enter here. If the line is there, I can also, especially on that line, hit.
That's kind of medium.
Yeah, well, either way, is I can hit that one, and kind of like we did this to this one to deflect, I can hit with side of blade here, right here, and deflect down into the hand. A lot of the Filipino weapons don't have hand guard, so that bounce to that cut is valid, right? It's and even if the little disc guard that's there on a lot of those antiques, or a fairly thin S guard is still there, that is a valid shot. Can you get back in? Right? So that's a single time enter as we come in here. I can go after the arm here, I can go after the head, depending on that line. He goes low, and I can feel on that line, I'm going after, nope, the line is wrong, and I'll just reassemble my target. Because I'm trying to go to here, no, it's not there. And I'll go farther down the arm. So you have that same contrada line is happening, right? So if we look at that difference, then here's backhand, contact. Here. Okay, so I can go in. And this is me taking advantage of the contact and entry line off the contrada, or if we did 1 and 2, so one, sometime in there, throw in a low line shot, right? So now I don't know when he's gonna throw in that low line shot. But if I'm in contrada here, and now I'm not slipping that one, but we're also artificially close on this drill here as we're just playing around with it. Right, and so you see that slip and that counter cut, both of these are contradas and not needing force on force. So the 3 and 4 line, you can come down, 4, I go this way, you can do 3, I can do the same thing, right? I can, a couple different variations on footwork patterns, on my slip, okay? I'm just following 3s and 4s. If we were to make that a pattern, go 1, 2, 3, and if I did it to him, he's going to counter me to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can go side step footwork. 1, 2, 3. Here. 3, 4. My God. Has it been 2 months since I've drilled with another person? What? Good. Okay, that's 4 lines of contradas there. A couple of examples of sort of how you would fight it. Let's see, what time is it? Yeah, it's been almost an hour. So I hope that gives you some ideas of some movements from contact contrada. Contrada is higher level. It takes way more timing to get there, but these are relatively easy ways to get in there. Some of them are definitely more complex than this and as we go into that, but this should hopefully give you some solid ideas about what's going on with that. Do you have any questions about this or anything else in particular? So there's a lag on this, so we'll wait for questions to come in if you guys have any. And if not, it'll be a while because hopefully we're back in our regular classes next week. So we'll see. So, waiting for questions. No questions are coming in.
You've answered them all.
Yes. Master instructors. Okay. Well, if not, thank you guys all very much. And thanks, Lindsay. We will see you hopefully in class again. Hopefully. We'll see. And we'll go from there. For the rest of you that have joined in for our live streams, we may do one in the future, just show what like a real class looks like. Maybe after this whole COVID-19 thing goes away, so everybody's not in masks and everything. So anyway, thanks all. I'll see you. Good night.